She was my spokesperson when I ran for higher office many, many moons ago. Thank you for that. And she's also my goddaughter in her wedding. So just so that in full transparency. So also because I know that that tourism is a driver of the local economy, and I want to learn more about it, and I have some ideas as well. I never claimed to be an expert in anything, much less tourism. So I want to really look at the budget of each and every agency, not to block it, but to enhance it, okay? And I think you would know from your friends in government, when I chaired the Committee on Finance and when I vice chair other committees, that my hearings may take very long, especially the NCCA with small agencies that are otherwise not heard, or kasi yan na lang, but let's say 10, even the library, even National Archives, which are usually never heard lengthily, but the hearings maybe have started, let's say 9 a.m., end up 5 p.m., right? Ganon. NCCA yan. Yeah, with all National Museum, and they enjoy it, and I enjoy it as well. However, today, because it was moved from 2, and then they wanted earlier because they know I have lengthy hearings, I have a very important meeting outside of a Senate at 1. That means I'll have to leave at 12:30. So we will start with the Office of the Secretary, and I will see your presentation, and like, say, Philippine Tourism Board, Marga, good friend. I'd like to know more about it and all of this. Let's say, yes, Attorney Padilla, you were my lawyer, right? Yeah, okay, just full of para transparency, lawyer ko si Attorney Padilla, yes. And I'm glad, and of course, Mark, my God, of course, yes, Mark. I'd like to know more about TIEZA. And let me just state now that the TIEZA budget will have a separate meeting because the post office, which is a newly created committee in the Senate after 2022 when it burned down, was given to me. With the leadership change, they've not given it to anyone else if anybody would care about that. So I need to know because I've not conducted a hearing there from the last meeting we had in the conference room. So I may be asked, I need to know. So Mark, there might be another hearing for that and all the TIEZA properties so that I learn more about it. And all the other agencies I can't see anymore. So having said that, I just wanted to let you know that we will have another hearing for the attached agencies, the bureaus, after today, but we will try to do whatever we can up to 12:30. Okay. So before I read my opening statement, may I request Director Sukandao to read into the record the presence of everyone so that I meet everybody as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to our honored guests. For the budget briefing of the Department of Tourism and its attached agencies for today, we have as resource persons the following: the Honorable Maria Esperanza Cristina Garcia Frasco, the Secretary of the Department of Tourism. Good morning, Madam. Undersecretary Shalimar Hofer Tamano, the Chief of Staff and Concurrent Undersecretary for Tourism, Regulation, Coordination, and Resource Generation. Attorney Shireen Gail Yu Pamintuan, Undersecretary for Administration and Finance. We have Undersecretary Ferdinand Humapao from the Office of the Secretary. Undersecretary Mayra Paz Valderosa Abubakar from the Office of the Secretary. Good morning po. Undersecretary Verna Esmeralda Buensuceso from the Tourism Development Planning. Undersecretary Maria Rica Bueno, Tourism Standard Regulations and Human Capital Development. Assistant Secretary Gisela Marie Kisumbing, Branding and Marketing Communications of the DOT. Assistant Secretary Judeline Kiachon, the Regional Monitoring Service. Assistant Secretary Charlene Zabala Batin, Tourism Standard Regulations and Human Capital Development. and concurrent regional director for NCR. Director Warner Andrada, the OIC Assistant Secretary for the Tourism, Development Planning and Research, Research and Information Management. We have Madam Margarita M. Nograles from the Tourism Promotions Board. Good morning po. Mr. Patrick Joel Cinco, Acting Chief Operating Officer of the Duty Free Philippines Corporation. We have Attorney Joanne Padilla from the Intramuros Administration. Ms. Cecile Lorenzana Romero, the Executive Director of the National Parks Development Committees. General Manager and CEO, Mr. Roberto Zozobrado of the Philippine Retirement Authority. We have Executive Director Gertrudes Duran Batocabe from the Angnayong Filipino Foundation Incorporated. We have Executive Director Mr. Marco Ancheta from the Philippine Commission on Sports Scuba Diving. And we have Dr. Mark Lapid, the Chief Operating Officer of the Tourism Infrastructure and Enterprise Zone Authority. We also have Assistant Secretary Ronald Canopio from the Office of the Secretary. And Madam Chair, we also have from the Commission on Audit, Ms. Joanne Bells Clavio, and Ms. Mercedes de la Cruz from the Department of Budget and Management, together with Ms. Lulu Vispo. That's all for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sukandao. May I just read into the record my opening statement? Ang pagdinig ng Subcommittee G ng Komite ng Pananalapi ay formal nang binubuksan. Pahayag, ang ibig sabihin yung mabuhay, ng masigla at pondo ng Kagawaran ng Turismo para sa taong 2025 naway maging sentro ng ating mga layunin ang salitang mabuhay. Mabuhay para sa walang kapagurang tour guide na sa kabila ng matinding sikat ng araw at tumatagaktak na pawis ay abot langit pa rin ang ngiti habang sinasalaysay ang kasaysayan ng ating inang bayan. Mabuhay para sa mga habing may bihasang kamay na lumikha ng makukulay na tela na patuloy na sumasalamin ng ating pagkakamalikhain at likas na talento. Mabuhay para sa kusinerong hindi alintana ang pagod sa pagluluto, makapaghain lamang ng pinakamasarap, pinagmamalaki nating lokal na pagkain. Ito ang tunay na kahulugan ng ating turismo, pagpapalakas ng natatanging yaman ng ating bansa, walang iba kundi ang mga Pilipino. Bilang taga-pangulo ng subcommittee ito, nais kong bigyan diin ang ating pagsusuri ng pondo ng kagawaran, hindi lamang nakatuon sa pag-akit ng turista, kundi sa pangangalaga ng ating kalikasan at ang ating mayamang kultura. Higit sa lahat, kasama rito ang pagpapalalim ng pag-unawa ng ating pagkakakilanlang bilang Pilipino. Sa totoo lang, kahit walang promosyon ay sapat na ang likas na kagandahan ng Pilipinas upang dayuhin ito ng ating mga turista. Ngunit sa apat na sulok ng kwartong ito, tangan natin ang isang mas malalim na tungkulin, ang pagbibigay ng kabuhayan at mga oportunidad ng kabuhayan sa ating ekonomiya para sa ating mga kababayan, habang iniingatan ang walang katulad na kariktan ng ating bansa. Kasabay nito, ang ating hangarin na maipamana sa mga susunod na henerasyon ang nakakamangha at makapigil hiningang paraiso ng ating bayan. I don't have my colleagues yet to provide me a quorum. We're not sure if someone is online, and Director Sukanda was already acknowledged for the record all of those present here today. So I would like to hear the opening statement of our good secretary and to listen, learn, and ask questions. And as I mentioned earlier, we will hear the Office of the Secretary, and I would like to see also the regional budgets and how you will spend it. and how I could help to enhance it. I would like to know also if all, hellos, yes, my dear colleague, our Majority Leader, Senator Francis Tolentino, thank you for joining me. Okay. Another advocate for tourism, of course, from Tagaytay and the whole country. So before I proceed to give it to Secretary Frasco, would you like to make an opening statement?
Nothing new, Madam Chair. Just greet some of our tourism advocates here, Mayong buntag. Mayong buntag, naggadto ako diri sa hearing para suportahan ang budget ng DOT. But just the same, ma'am, if I can give a note that I should be leaving behind, you should be aware that there were several measures filed within this chamber. One was approved just today, a few hours ago, the VAT on digital activities, services. And then we are on the brink of approving the refund for tourism VAT. And then there's another one. So I encourage all the tourism advocates present here to be aware of those legislative measures. How would it impact your department? How would it impact the tourism industry? The VAT, digital on VAT services, for instance, just signed into a law a few hours ago by the President. I was there. And then the refund. The refund, I was pushing for the inclusion of products coming from, not just from the airport, but products coming from surrounding towns produced by tourism endeavors. For instance, if you go to Cagayan de Oro Airport, you'll not just be purchasing products from Cagayan de Oro. You will have the illegal peanuts. You will have products coming from even Tubod, Lanao del Sur, Lanao del Norte, I'm sorry, and other areas. So hindi masyadong nakalusot pa yun. But again, I encourage all of you to be aware of existing legislative measures that would impact the tourism industry. And Madam Chair, I just probably would be asking a question later on, and if I'm not here, perhaps
you can ask questions first because I'll have a second hearing. Thank you
Yes.
for mentioning that. We
Madam
will
Chair,
have the presentation, then you can
the
ask
post
first.
office, the post office.
I'm glad you asked
Yes,
that.
so
We
later
will
on.
have a separate hearing because
Okay.
this initial hearing will be about the Office of the Secretary, and all the attached agencies will have another hearing. And as I mentioned before you arrived, we will have a TIEZA hearing with the status of the post office because we have an oversight committee which I chair on the post office. So you can join the next hearing
Thank you,
also.
Madam Chair.
Thanks. You can, actually, nothing would preclude you from asking now, even if we have, susuriin natin yung post office, TIEZA budget.
I'll abide by the rules, Madam Chair.
You abide by the rules. Yan ang gusto ko sa Majority Leader. Okay. Sige, thanks. Thank you very much, Senator Tolentino. We proceed now, Secretary Frasco.
Mabuhay ug mayong buntag. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat and love the Philippines. Today, we have the honor to present the proposed budget of the Department of Tourism and its attached agencies for the fiscal year 2025. Our gratitude goes to the Senate, especially our chairperson of Subcommittee G of the Committee on Finance, Senator Lauren Legarda, as well as Senator Tolentino and all the members of this august chamber for the invaluable support, and we pray for the continued fiscal investment to allow Philippine tourism to thrive. Philippine tourism embodies our nation's vibrant spirit, uniting the Filipino people towards an appreciation of our nation's abundance, engendering in our hearts a deep love of country that allows us to present our best attributes to the world, and in turn, impressing upon all who come upon our hinterlands and our shores a multitude of reasons to love the Philippines. Over the course of the past 2 years, coming out of the utter devastation that was the global pandemic and various crises and calamities, we met the challenge of recovering, not only by setting our sights on all that had been lost, but rather looking inward at all that needed to be done. and all that could still be achieved with a perspective trained towards transformation, investment, innovation, and sustainability. Under the direction of our President, Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., we have applied a dynamic and multidimensional approach towards tourism that seeks to increase our global competitiveness. In doing so, we expand opportunities for income and employment to as many Filipinos as we can in as many destinations across our archipelago. Advocating that tourism must and should be anchored on the strength of our heritage, culture, and identity, and focused on enhanced travel experiences by investing in world-class hospitality and amenities, we are positioning the Philippines as a premier travel destination towards the goal of becoming a tourism powerhouse. Investing in tourism goes beyond generating revenue. It creates jobs, uplifts communities, and showcases the Philippines on the global stage. Every peso invested in tourism has a ripple effect, improving infrastructure, expanding our connectivity, supporting local businesses, and opening doors to a better life for millions of Filipinos. As we present our budget today, we look back to the previous allocations for the Department of Tourism and its attached agencies. In 2023, tourism received over 3.7 billion pesos. In 2024, that was reduced to 3.4 billion pesos. And for 2025, we have been allocated a ceiling of 3.33 billion pesos. In our presentation later on, we will itemize the OSEC as well as the attached agencies' budget proposals to give our senators an appreciation of where the monies allocated to the Department of Tourism have gone to. Allow us to present the tourism performance indicators of the DOT. In 2023, Philippine tourism proved to be an economic powerhouse for our nation, with over 3.36 trillion pesos in combined tourism receipts coming into the coffers of our economy, contributing over 8.6% to our gross domestic product, and marking for the very first time in 24 years, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, the highest growth in tourism direct gross value at nearly 48%. All these numbers have redounded to the benefit of our fellow Filipinos, with tourism employing over 6.21 million Filipinos in tourism-related industries in 2023. According to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, for the first time in 15 years, the net trade surplus in travel services reached over 2.45 billion US dollars, therefore contributing nearly 19% in travel services. Philippine tourism has further proven its strength by its performance according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, which reported that the Philippines boasts of the largest domestic tourism market in Southeast Asia. In 2023, our domestic market was valued at 52.1 billion US dollars, highlighting domestic tourism as a key strength and significant factor in attracting further investments into our country. The Philippines also led Southeast Asia in tourism's contribution to the national output. The good news is that we exceeded our target with 5.45 million international visitors in 2023, surpassing our projected 4.8 million, clearly demonstrating a growing global interest in the Philippines. To sustain this growth, our President approved the National Tourism Development Plan for 2023 to 2028, which anchors the strength of Philippine tourism on our heritage, culture, and identity, all towards the goal of becoming a tourism powerhouse. What is unique about this National Tourism Development Plan is that it seeks to address the developmental pillars of tourism by instituting basic development in order to ensure that the Philippines continues to be globally competitive while taking advantage of global trends by introducing innovation. With our collaboration with the Department of Public Works and Highways and our firm focus on tourism infrastructure, this saw the construction and expansion of over 531 kilometers of tourism roads across the country to benefit our tourism destinations. There have also been inaugurations of significant infrastructure to include bridges and other projects that will enhance tourism connectivity. We have also sought to expand the Philippines' reach by focusing on our cruise tourism portfolio. Having received 125 cruise calls in more than 30 destinations in 2023, and this number is fast expanding. Recognizing that one of the disadvantages in terms of connectivity for the Philippines vis-a-vis its landlocked ASEAN neighbors, we have focused on expanding connectivity by ensuring that we are very aggressive in routes development. This has seen a convergence with the Department of Transportation, which then resulted in a 94% recovery of our international seats compared to our 2019 numbers, and a 99% recovery in domestic seats. This year, we also expect to activate new and reinstituted routes, the most exciting of which, one of the most exciting of which will be in December with the return of the Paris to Manila connectivity. We have also sought to ensure that tourism comes upon the digital age with the launch of innovative measures that enhances digitalization in the tourism industry. This includes the enhanced Travel Philippines app launched by the DOT and the Tourism Promotions Board that allows our tourists to get to know our destinations and obtain assistance in terms of curating their travel experiences. If you have any query pertaining to our destinations or require assistance of any kind, wherever you may be in the Philippines, there is now a number that you can call by way of our Tourist Assistance Call Center, 151 Tour, which has already received over 10,200 calls and transactions since its inception. Under the Marcos administration, we seek to enhance the overall tourism experience, which is why we have constructed tourist rest areas all over the Philippines, with 10 that have come up and continue to come up across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and which contain convenient amenities for our tourists, such as an information center, a lounge, a cafe, restrooms, as well as a pasalubong center to benefit our small and medium enterprises. So popular has been this project among our local stakeholders and our local government units that apart from the 10 launched in 2023, we now expect 22 more to arise across our destinations in the country, to include even the farthest reaches of the Philippines, to as far north as Batanes, as far south as Sulu and Tawi-Tawi. I was just in Sulu recently, and towards the east and the western side of the Philippines. We recognize that enhancing tourist safety is one of the most important components of tourism development, which is why we have inked a memorandum of agreement with TIEZA and DOH in order to construct tourist first aid facilities across our destinations in the country. These tourist first aid facilities will be capacitated with medical equipment to render emergency care by the DOH and with the assistance in constructing the facilities through TIEZA. The dive industry is one of the strongest tourism products for the country, which is why it is important to ensure diver safety. This will see the institution and construction of an additional 5 hyperbaric chambers in our dive sites across Oriental Mindoro, Negros Oriental, Boracay, Camiguin, and Cebu as a start to further ensure that dive tourism expands for our country. We have also sought to introduce innovative projects that put the Philippines shoulder to shoulder with its competitors. This includes the introduction of the Philippines' very first hop-on, hop-off bus tours, which allows our tourists to get to know our destinations in Metro Manila And this month, we are launching the Philippines' very first layover tours from our airports here in Manila. We are also ensuring that those at the front lines of receiving our tourists are provided with the right capacities to ensure that service quality is consistent and world-class wherever you may be in the country. With that, we have strongly advocated for the expansion of the Filipino Brand of Service Excellence program. Through our very aggressive trainings that have been conducted across the country, as you can see in the map, we have now managed to train over 235,000 Filipino tourism workers in the Filipino Brand of Service Excellence. This
I don't want to interrupt because it's very interesting. Just kindly note later in the questions when I ask the jobs generated from tourism and affiliated activities before your term in 2022 and then to date. So I want to see the difference if there was. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. As we have continued to capacitate our tourism workers, we have also sought to expand opportunities in the tourism sector by continuing our tourism industry skills program with over 1,700 trainings conducted in 2023 and to date with over 353,000 persons trained with skills such as tour guiding, language courses, culinaria services, farm tourism, and the like. Further expanding our tourist safety portfolio in the country, we have also trained tourist police across our destinations. But we have since expanded this program not only to train personnel under the PNP, but also police auxiliary forces across our local government units to include barangay tanods. And we have instituted this expanded program to several areas in the country at 399 trainees. One of the flagship programs of the Marcos administration has really been to ensure that the opportunity for tourism development is as expansive as it can be across the country, which is why we have launched the Tourism Champions Challenge. The Tourism Champions Challenge invited LGUs across the country to propose creative, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive tourism infrastructure projects to the DOT and to TIEZA. And we received 98 proposals in total. These proposals then went through a rigorous process of expert advice from government agencies as well as private tourism stakeholders and experts. And this saw the awarding of LGUs across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao a combined amount of 255 million in ceremonies headed by no less than our president. Notably, in Mindanao, the first place winner is from Isabela City, Basilan. I highlight this to note that under the Marcos administration, tourism opportunities are given to all places in the country. And we are glad that tourism is now an opportunity for hope and employment in Basilan. Since it is the intention of the Department of Tourism to capitalize upon not just our natural destinations, but also our strengths in terms of our culture and heritage, we have aggressively launched the Philippine Experience Program across the country. This highlights the offerings of our tourism destinations that are multidimensional and fully diversified, from our gastronomy or our food, to our culture and our festivals, to our biodiversity, even to our weavings and textiles from our local communities. The Philippine Experience Program has been implemented across 9 regions, 22 provinces, and several other cities and municipalities. This program will expand to all regions in the country in the months to come. As we have sought to put the Philippines at the forefront of gastronomy tourism, I am pleased to announce that we have just recently successfully hosted the first United Nations Tourism Regional Forum on Gastronomy Tourism for Asia and the Pacific in Cebu. This gathering brought together over 600 delegates from 43 countries, all of whom have endorsed the Cebu Call to Action on Gastronomy Tourism, laying down the strategy framework for developing gastronomy tourism on a global level. The hosting of the Philippines also extended to the UN Tourism Joint Commission meetings for East Asia and the Pacific and South Asia, which brought together member nations of UN tourism to discuss, among others, education tourism, sustainable tourism, and other strategies by which together we can continue to recover sans the pandemic. With these, we also welcome several tourism milestones for the Philippines, to include the continued emergence of the Philippines as a premier dive destination. Because of our aggressive approach towards expanding dive tourism in the country, we now have 120 dive destinations across the Philippines, and the Philippines has recently been recognized as Asia's leading dive destination. As we seek to be inclusive in tourism development, we have also ensured that the Philippines continues to emerge as a halal and Muslim-friendly destination. And with that, we are pleased to let the Senate know that the Philippines has now been recognized for the second year in a row as an emerging Muslim-friendly destination in the Halal in Travel Awards. We have also instituted several Muslim-friendly programs to increase our value proposition as such, with the launch of the very first Muslim-friendly cove for travelers in Boracay. As we have looked inwards, we have also sought to strengthen our partnerships outwards, with tourism cooperation agreements having been signed with nations such as Japan, China, Brunei, as well as Qatar. We have sought to expand opportunities for tourism, not only for our fellow Filipinos here in the country, but also abroad. With that, we have instituted tourism programs for overseas Filipino workers, such as the Bisita Be My Guest program, which invites OFWs to invite foreigners to come to the Philippines in exchange for incentives and prizes, such as condominiums, house and lot, and the like. We have also inked a memorandum of cooperation with the Department of Migrant Workers to provide tourism skills and livelihood trainings, with over 6,000 OFWs surveyed for this particular program. This will allow returning OFWs to seamlessly reintegrate into the country and continue to have gainful livelihood. Recognizing that our tourism frontliners are always the ones that are first and foremost gravely affected in times of calamities, we have sought to increase social protections for them. With that, we have inked partnerships with both the Department of Labor and Employment and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, where, in instances where there are calamities that occur in tourism destinations, we, together with our partner agencies, provide alternative tourism livelihood trainings as well as financial assistance. We are grateful to Senator Legarda for highlighting that it is our tour guides that are at the forefront of the tourism industry. We are exactly aligned in this regard, in that we have sought to bring our tour guides into the fold of tourism development by providing them with tour guide kits to better their services among our tourists, as well as personal accident insurance. With that, the globe has come to love the Philippines even more, with recognitions that have come upon our country time and again. Recently, at the World Travel Awards, the Philippines received no less than 8 awards, including Asia's leading island destination, Asia's leading dive destination, Asia's leading wedding destination for Cebu, Asia's leading luxury destination for Boracay, Asia's leading tourist attraction for Intramuros, among others. With that, Madam Chair and the good Senator, we now move on to the specifics of our budget proposal to cover the Office of the Secretary and the attached agencies. I now cede. Yes, Senator.
Thank you for that presentation. You're always prepared, my dear inaanak. Okay, but I have questions.
Yes.
Only because I'm new in the tourism presentation, questions to learn, to enhance. But I yield to our majority leader who will have to leave. So he will have to ask questions on your budget first, and we will have the agencies later on. Yes.
Just one question, Madam Chair. I'm staunch supporter of Cebu tourism and the rest. I even attended your Pasigarbo. I think that was a few weeks ago. Just one question. This probably would involve the other agencies present here. I just heard during your first 2 minutes of opening statement that you visited Sulu. Very appreciative of that. And perhaps your visit to Sulu involved something inaugurating a project or envisioning a future project, Madam Secretary?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for that question, Majority Leader. I did indeed visit Sulu recently, primarily.
Tawi-Tawi also some time back, right?
Yes,
saw
I have
it.
also visited Tawi-Tawi. I visited Sulu for the second time under this administration. First and foremost, to express that Sulu is well within the plans of the Marcos administration in terms of tourism development. I was there to commemorate with them their Bangsasug Day, as well as to break ground on a tourist rest area for the province, which marks government's confidence in the potential of Sulu to become an emerging tourism destination.
Thank you, good Secretary. Even Tawi-Tawi, as mentioned by the good chairperson, should likewise be involved because we're in the brink of declaring another national shrine in Tawi-Tawi, where the first mosque was created. Datu Mahmud. Yes. So the reason why I raised Sulu because I was the one who raised that issue when the Supreme Court handed down that ruling separating Sulu from the BARM. And I likewise raised this issue to the President, and it has something to do with the existence of the Ministry of Trade, Investment, and Tourism in Sulu. Because of the separation from the BARM, effective September 10, if I'm not mistaken, this was extended to September 15, all tourism employees based in Sulu of that Ministry of Trade, Investment, and Tourism will now be out of employment. Projects discontinued, offices closed, etc., etc. Is there a plan of the Department of Tourism encapsulated in your budget proposal that would cover the displaced tourism Ministry of Tourism workers in Sulu, including their capital outlays, Madam Secretary? Paano na po yung mga tiga Sulu? Si Yusek Tamano.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Notably, even prior to the decision of the Supreme Court, I had already visited both Sulu and Tawi-Tawi. And we have an existing collaboration with the ministry in charge of trade and tourism, as in fact, our collaboration with them also includes them benchmarking our national accreditation standards in terms of ensuring that there are quality accommodations in BARM. That having been said, when we proposed our budget before the Department of Budget and Management, this had been prior to the release of the Supreme Court decision separating Sulu from BARM. Notwithstanding that, we would be open to any assistance from the Senate in terms of funding the region that will have jurisdiction over Sulu in order to ensure that the displacements can be addressed.
I think that would be Region 9, based in Pagadian. Marami-rami rin sila. To include all other departments, I think that the number would hover between 6,000 to 7,000 employees. Marami din. I just took note of that because you mentioned also several programs that would involve halal and your pitch to improve tourism in our involving our Muslim brothers and sisters. So, Madam Chair, sana po sa fine-tune natin ng budget, wag po natin makalimutan ang lalawigan ng Sulu. Kasi hindi lang sila bahagi ng tourism and culture, but they deserve to be a part of the greater pie in terms of national budgetary allocation. Yun lang po, Madam Chair, and I'm sure the good chairperson would also consider the plight of the displaced Sulu tourism employees. Daghang salamat, ma'am. Assalamualaikum.
Yeah.
I was pitching for a Sulu transition fund.
Yes. I mean, I think you should say it because you shouldn't say sa plenary na ako magtatanong. No, tanong mo na dito.
Can we
Diba?
have a
Oh, binubulong mo ako sa plenary na ako magtatanong. Hindi, tanungin mo na nga dito.
Siguro-
Hindi ba?
siguro
Okay.
there's-
And tell us your ideas how to improve
So,
on it. Yeah.
if there is you have a counterpart in the BARM. There's the Minister of Trade and Investments and Industry and Tourism. Can we get the exact number of employees displaced? The total amount earmarked for their salaries, emoluments, and what have you. So, because this would be the priority, yung sweldo nila. Hindi naman siguro to abutin ng mahigit 100, Madam Secretary. So, if we get hold of that, can we have them incorporated in the budget of the central office as part of their transition, as part of this proposal to have a transition fund? Kasi tigil na yung sweldo nila ngayong September 15. Ngayon ay karon ay October 2. Paano na yun? Di ba? And it's not just for you. DILG, DPWH, mas marami sa DepEd, 4,000 employees, teachers from Sulu. So, paano ho kaya maisasama any creative financial engineering proposal to incorporate the budget hanggang so this budget is for 2025. I'm now talking about the last quarter of 2024. That's a remedial measure. Because 2025, I think they would have, yung napag-usapan siguro sa Malacanang, to have an increase, baka NTA for Sulu as part of the prophylactic measure for 2025. So, but for 2024, paano kaya natin has there been a talk with the DBM?
Majority Leader, perhaps we can look to precedent in terms of what the Department of Tourism has done in terms of shifts, jurisdictional shifts. So recently, as you know, the Negros Island region was created, the effect of which was to separate certain provinces and compound them into NIR, including Siquijor. And so what the DOT has done is to issue a department order to form a technical working group to ensure that there is a proper transition to address displacements as well as to ensure that services are not hindered. And we can engage in a similar measure specifically for Sulu. Pertaining to budgets, as far as the personnel component and capital outlay is concerned, we would have to necessarily consult with the Department of Budget and Management whether or not
And the Civil Service Commission as well.
correct, whether or not a creation of new positions under the DOT can be had in the latter part of, or rather, beginning this year, and to transition to the next year.
Hindi lang naman, Madam Chair, sila may problema nito. Yung mga police cars nga natin sa Sulu, wala na rin gasolina eh. So, halos lahat eh. So, but I think the President is on top of this. Nabuksan ko lang kasi narinig ko yung Sulu kanina, and then yung halal initiatives ninyo, which is which is really laudable. So, Madam Chair, no further questions. I'm supportive of the budget of
Very good.
DOT. And if I may be allowed to leave, I
Yes.
think the DOT budget is in good hands with your chairmanship.
Thank you. And you will join us because your question on the post office has not yet been answered. I'm sorry, there's no time today for that. Yes, we will have to address that. Yeah. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Senator, don't forget him when you go around the country. A candidate who also, of course, loves the Philippines. Thank you, Senator Tolentino. Yes. Basic question. Secretary, can you put on the screen the tourism arrivals for all ASEAN neighbors? Do you have it? And just a very basic question, which is on the minds of every Filipino who cares about our country. Why can we not have similar numbers for for the Philippines as in other ASEAN? Just kindly, if you have it, put the ASEAN neighbors, including Laos, Cambodia, put Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand. Do we have it? If we don't have it on screen, can you just read it into the record? And then please explain what are they, this is even before, this is just policy, even before we go into the budget of each region. What are they doing that we are not doing? What is it you want to do that they're doing that fits into our tourism development plan that you want me to support? Yeah, but it would be best if you have it on screen.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. As they are trying to come up with the slide that addresses your question, if I may put tourism numbers in the context that we try to put it in order to have a full appreciation of tourism performance for the country. Traditionally, tourism performance has been measured by international arrivals. But since the onset of the pandemic, globally, tourism performance has shifted not only towards counting international arrivals, but also looking at domestic tourism and, importantly, visitor receipts, as it is the spending of our tourists that ultimately comes into our coffers and benefits employment and livelihood. That being said, in terms of the international arrivals,
Let's focus first on international arrivals for ASEAN countries. Second, tourism receipts, whether from international arrivals and domestic tourism, if we have those figures, so that we can compare.
yes. So on international tourism, Madam Chair, Thailand in 2023 was pegged at over 28 million. That was followed by Malaysia at 20 million. And we also have Vietnam at 12 million, Indonesia at 11 million. Then you have the Philippines at 5.45 million.
Do we even have Laos and Cambodia?
Yes.
Here, okay.
So the numbers are reflected on the screen. To the right is also reflected the budgets for these ASEAN countries, which would first and foremost answer the question as to why tourism performance is either expanded or contracted. So as you can see, in terms of the budgets of the ASEAN member states, the Philippines is pegged at 63 million US dollars, whereas Thailand is pegged at 147 million, Indonesia at a much bigger amount of over 1.5 billion, Malaysia at 255 million, Vietnam at 87 million, and so on and so forth. So
Is this accurate? The budget of Laos is 1.7 billion? Huh? Is it accurate? How can that be? Their budget, tama ba yung nakikita ko? It's my eyes. Their
yes,
budget,
it says 1.7 billion. Let's clarify
huh?
that, please.
How can the budget of Laos be bigger than Indonesia? Huh? Is it accurate? Okay. And Thailand's budget is only 147 million, and Laos' budget is 1.74 billion. I can't believe that. And the budget of Vietnam is 87 million, and Laos is 1.74 billion. It's hard to believe.
Madam Chair,
That's correct.
Madam Chair, if I may clarify.
I'm trying to understand. So our budget is 63 million.
1.74 million, not billion. Okay, so it's million. Madam Chair, that's actually a typographical error. So the briefer, in your briefer, specifically page 38, it's 1.37 million. Apologies for that.
Sure, sure. Make your staff. I know. I'm a stickler for accuracy because it could be
Absolutely.
very misleading. Although I love Laos, and I wish we had an area like Luang Prabang. I don't know if you've been there. Been there several times in my life. It's my happy place. One of the Luang Prabang is an example of how a heritage city, French-inspired, a French colonial town, has been restored, maybe like Intramuros, which is Spanish-influenced, where there's culture, there's nature, and there's so much tourism. I don't know, pero ilan lang ang arrivals nila, 2.4, but it's much smaller country. But compared, okay, and their allocation is 1.7 million, right?
Correct.
Million. Very small. So, 1 million lang halos ang kanila. Yeah. And they have 2.4, but if you compute that compared to us, yeah, maybe if you double them, but for such a small allocation.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's correct that, please, so that we. Okay, so let's compare our allocation of 5.4 arrivals, let's say, to our neighbor Indonesia, which is double us, even Vietnam, which is more than double. Let's not even compare with Singapore. They're small country and more resources, but perhaps we can compare. Secretary, help me with this. Which is the country in ASEAN where we can compare ourselves the most in terms of arrivals and budgetary allocation, that we should aspire to be like, and what are they doing that we are not doing because we have similar, if not the same, attractions? The mountains and the sea, lakes and rivers. We even have the facility of language, and we have an equally interesting culture, and perhaps even more. And we have the local enterprises. In short, what they have and what they offer, we have. So what is it? And we have the seas, and we're an archipelago. What are they doing that we're not? And if we look at the budgets, so it's similar if it's our ASEAN neighbors. What country would you like us, you excise which country in ASEAN that you'd like us to compare, and perhaps tell me, based on your 2-year experience of being secretary, or even having worked in Cebu and having traveled to that country, what is it that they have that we don't have? But I cannot think of any natural attraction that they have that we don't. So we must be missing out on an action that we could do. And I'd like to know that so I can help support you aspire for those numbers.
Yes.
Thank-
I'm so glad you asked that, Madam Chair, because that is precisely the exercise that the Department of Tourism has been doing in the past 2 years to truly understand the landscape.
Just to be sure, Indonesia's budget is 1.7 billion. Are you sure of that? Huh? It's 1.7 billion. Thailand's budget is only 147. Is 147. Kalahati tayo, 63. Yeah, kasi we have to start with accurate facts, right? Okay, para maliwanag, ha? Indonesia's budget is 1.5 billion. Right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And ang mali lang dyan, has it been corrected? It can't be corrected. It's an art card, right? 63. So we have a lower budget from Vietnam, but a bigger budget than Cambodia. And look at this, Cambodia. We only have 500,000 more tourist arrivals, but their budgetary allocation is less than one half of ours. We are as beautiful as Cambodia, even if they have the Angkor Wat.
Yes.
Can we correct this? Art card dito, no? Yeah.
They're in the process of correcting it, Madam Chair. What is often not taken into consideration in the comparison of tourism performance is also our geographic challenges, which necessarily puts the Philippines at a gross disadvantage, in a sense that most of our ASEAN neighbors are landlocked with each other, and so travel by land is the primary cause of arrival, whereas over 99% of the arrivals in the Philippines are necessarily by air. And so the number one challenge for Philippine tourism vis-a-vis the ASEAN would be infrastructure. The second being connectivity. So we have done the exercise of comparing the positioning of the Philippines in terms of, first, the existence of appropriate tourism infrastructure. According to a study that was conducted by the World Economic Fund in 2021, the Philippines ranks number 75 out of 117 economies when it comes to tourism infrastructure. In direct comparison to that would be Indonesia, which would be closest to us in terms of attributes, and if I'm not mistaken, they are ranked at 12. Number 12, in terms of tourism infrastructure. Now, in terms of the number...
They're number 12, and we are 75.
75.
What do you mean? That they have
Yes.
provided the infrastructure.
Correct.
Island din sila, lilipad ka rin doon, right? Oo. So, tingnan natin yung numbers. Correct. So, it's infrastructure.
Yes.
The correct numbers already? Tama na yan. O sige. I understand what you're saying, that it's difficult to compare a landlocked country where the neighbors can go, let's say from, Laos. But, yes, from Laos. Can you bring it back, please, to that page? Let's say, so let's compare ourselves to a similarly situated country like Indonesia. Sige. So, their allocation...
Can we go back, please, to the
Go back to that original page,
ASEAN
please.
numbers?
Indonesia's, are you sure it's 1.5 billion? Yeah.
This is based on research
Okay.
conducted by...
So you really can't
first
compare a
statistics
63 million to a 1.5 billion budget,
You
right?
cannot.
So they have double our number of arrivals. Let's say Malaysia, 255, well, triple of ours. And they have triple also of their arrivals. But Vietnam, it's similar budget, 87 lang, we're 63, we can include that. You know, easily I could easily, what is your wish? Just, that's why I'm doing this exercise with you. You want me to give you a budget of Vietnam? I will.
Thank
I'll
you.
amend your budget. No, but you have to tell me. That's why we're doing this exercise. You have to be patient with me. I just like to probe you, all of you, and see where will it go. So, anong pagkakamaling ginagawa natin? Kung walang pagkakamali, anong pagkukulang? Anong hindi natin alam? O anong alam natin na hindi kayang gawin? Or meron kayong gustong gawin na magko-convert into jobs created, pero hindi kayo pinakinggan. Papakinggan ko kayo. So that's what I mean. That's why you have to tell me. You have to show me a country You're correct, Secretary, in saying number one, infrastructure. However, let me say this. Even if Laos, even if Cambodia may not have the infrastructure, like I, Myanmar even, but although their numbers are very small, I love those countries. I go there. The airports are rickety airports. Even when I went at the time, the infrastructure was not ready. When I went, let's say, long ago to Luang Prabang, but then the tourists really go. Let's say Inle Lake in Myanmar, where I went, let's say, 15 years ago, no infrastructure whatsoever. There were German tourists, so many tourists, and you have to fly to two small rickety airports, but people actually go. So what is it? So first, again, I go back to my initial question. Which country would you like us to discuss and compare the budgets allocated, but they have a higher tourist arrivals? What are they doing that we're not? And I say this, that hindi nyo kasalanan. It is not totally the fault of the DOT if there is a limitation on the arrivals, because law and order, crime and safety, comfort and sanitation are all part of the tourism scenario. Ugali ng tao, pagdating sa airport, marumi ang banyo or manloloko ang mga sasakyan. I mean, I'm being very, very forthright here. That's beyond you. That's why there should be really a convergence among agencies at dapat ipuntos natin saan ang pagkukulang. Pagpasok pa lang, kung marumi na ang banyo sa airport, kung mainit na yung aircon, gaya ng kwartong ito, kung linoloko na sila ng mga taxi driver or rent a car, right? Wala na. Turn off na, right? If we have the worst airports in the world, which I think we do, wala na. Hindi nyo kasalanan yon. Kaya nga dapat sabihin nyo sa akin, where lies the problem? And then when I go to that agency for the hearing, I will tell them this is your problem. And you have to help the OT. Whatever promotion you do, however beautiful our people and our attractions are, and we do, kung manloloko ang sasalubong sa kanila, and we are not manlolokos by nature because we are a good we're a good race. Mababuti tayong tao, kaya lang may manloloko. Anong gagawin natin, hindi ba? Kaya gusto ko malaman. Anyway, pero wherever in the world naman, maraming manloloko, maraming nag-pickpocket sa Rome, marami naman nangloloko maskisan maraming turista. So baka hindi yon. That's why I need to know, I want to be educated and compare which ASEAN country can you compare us with and what are they doing. So back to that page, please. Yeah.
Madam Chair, apart from the geographic challenges of the Philippines in terms of its archipelagic nature, as well as challenges in terms of infrastructure, we also have to be able to address challenges in terms of connectivity as well as accommodation. In our comparison of our numbers pertaining to connectivity, can we kindly go back to the slide that shows the number of seats in the ASEAN? We can see that the number of seats coming into the Philippines is almost directly proportional to its ranking in the ASEAN, which pegs it at either number 5 or number 6. And where we are
But
close,
Indonesia has 19 same seats.
yes, and where we are close to our neighbor Indonesia, their capacity in terms of accommodation is more than double the capacity, which actually triple the capacity of the Philippines, which is exactly why under the National Tourism Development Plan, if I can request that slide, please, the NTDP slide.
Just hold it there. Yeah. So we're really the lowest in seats. Well, Cambodia, of course. But look at this, huh? Cambodia seats is only 3.6, but their arrivals is 4.9, which is very close to ours of 5.4. So we cannot say it seats because Cambodia is 3.6 and they're 4.9, only a little difference from us, and we have much, much more seats.
Madam Chair, Cambodia
By
is
land.
not similarly geographically situated
by
as the
land.
Philippines, and they are landlocked.
Landlocked.
Yes, with
So-
the ASEAN.
We would compare ourselves best with Indonesia. So we have same seats, but it's their accommodations. They built the infrastructure, the accommodations for that. And they have a 1.5B, but I can't believe that kung totoo yan 1.5B budget, ang laki. Sila lang ang may ganyang budget sa ASEAN by the billions. Are
As
we
I know, Madam Chair, lately, in the past 2 years, Indonesia has also instituted a specific tourism development fund, which is outside the national coffers and is a specific and special fund that is devoted to the development of tourism alone. And perhaps that is also what is giving them a great advantage in terms of tourism investment.
So back to my question, Secretary, which country would you like to liken us? And perhaps aside from number one, our being an archipelago, of course you have to fly or take the cruise to get here. We're not landlocked, so that's a disadvantage, but also an advantage in terms of how we look and the geography. But aside from the seats, what else are other countries in ASEAN doing, or what do they have that we don't have?
Well, Madam Chair, the effort has really been to place the Philippines in a strategic and unique enough position so as to stand upon its own strengths without necessarily having to compare itself with others, and which is why we have sought to examine our value propositions. That includes the assets of the Philippines that we have not yet fully articulated to the world. For the longest time, we have marketed the Philippines as a fun and adventurous destination. Since the onset of the Marcos administration, we have aggressively pushed for the Filipino identity to be at the forefront of the promotion and marketing of tourism, to allow the world to have a Philippine experience that is anchored on our culture, our heritage, our arts, our gastronomy, and all the other assets of Philippine tourism that can provide experiences that perhaps other nations in the ASEAN are able to provide, but not necessarily the Philippines. With that, we are, as I mentioned earlier, we have instituted the Philippine Experience Program, where we encourage our destinations to look beyond their natural assets and to come up with tourism packages that can allow for purposeful experiences in the country. If I may, I would also like to go back to the National Tourism Development Plan objectives. Can I have the NTDP slide, please? Madam Chair, under the National Tourism Development Plan, we have identified the measures by which we would be able to increase the competitiveness of the Philippines, not just in terms of the ASEAN, but globally. As mentioned earlier, our greatest disadvantage is in terms of tourism infrastructure. And with that, we have sought for funding for tourism infrastructure to be prioritized. As a matter of fact, we have strongly advocated for the construction of new tourism roads, not just the continuation of existing roads. And this has seen government investment in new tourism roads at over 5 billion last year. And this year, we proposed that 8 billion pesos be devoted to tourism roads under the DPWH. Unfortunately, this was not carried in their national expenditure plan, and we continue to lobby for funding for the 8 billion for the new roads in order that we give opportunities for expanded tourism development across our destinations.
You mean this budget is not lodged under the DOT, but this is a convergence project of declared tourism areas, right?
Yes.
You say you were not granted. I think that the PWH has 6.380, right?
Yes.
Billion for the construction or the improvement of access roads to declared tourism destinations. That was going to be my next question. Give me, please, the priority tourist spots, regions, cities, municipalities that DOT is, that DPWH is serving that for DOT. If this is accurate, 6.3B.
Yes. Madam Chair, the 6.3 billion that has been proposed by the DPWH only pertains to continuing tourism roads. The 8 billion for new tourism roads that we proposed was not carried.
The 6.3 are part of existing tourism areas and unfinished road access.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Do you have a list of that?
We do.
Yes,
And we
could
would be
you-
happy to provide it to you.
Okay, after this, no, part of this hearing, and if you don't finish, we'll have, I want to see that 6.3 breakdown, or is that in the budget of DPWH?
That is in the budget of DPWH.
But you would have it.
Madam
And
Chair.
you should have checked, of course you have, that it will be aligned with last year's or the present year's budget because the roads were not finished, right?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So all the new road access to other destinations were not carried.
The new roads, Madam Chair.
No new roads.
No new roads.
To other destinations which are equally important to
That is
promote.
correct.
Okay, please proceed. Yes, please proceed. I still want to understand. Of course, we take note and agree on the problem that we're not landlocked. Of course, we have to fly. You have to fly to get in. And there's limited seats. Okay, tanggap natin yun. Second, the lack of infrastructure, and you're bringing it to the table that they completely did not support you in terms of the 8B allocation for new tourism roads, right? Wala. Totally none.
Unfortunately, it was
Yes.
not carried, Madam Chair.
Okay. And all they're doing is completing road access to already existing destinations. Okay. Taking into consideration those two, limited seats and no infrastructure leading to tourism destinations, what are your recommendations? What are you doing considering these two important support systems that must create a boost in tourism?
Madam Chair.
In short, what are you doing to increase seats from 19 to what? What is your target and when? And what are you doing if the TPWH or in the NEP, the 8B was not carried? So we can't just say, sorry, our tourism is pegged at 5 dahil wala eh. They turned down our budget. And second, the seats, that's beyond us. So I need to know what is it we can do within our limited power to solve that problem. Or do you have another solution that would not mean seats, that would not mean road access?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Apart from tourism roads, there is also an imminent need to develop airport infrastructure, considering that over 99% of the international travelers that arrive in the Philippines arrive via air. With that, we have strongly advocated with the Department of Transportation as far as supporting our President's call for public-private partnerships in the improvement and expansion of existing airports, as well as in the full maximization of these airports.
I agree
To
with
give you,
You're talking about international or domestic airports or
in,
both?
for both, Madam Chair.
You know, if we are to rely on them, they're so slow. They're terrible. They're really terrible. It's not just this administration, even in previous. There's something wrong with the OTR. I've chaired their budget since 2013. And and I was so displeased, really. They just put their budget in CAAP and it dies there. Alam mo yan, di ba? Nakakainis. Talagang, there's a budget for airports and they don't utilize it. And even my own airport in my province, I funded it may pera. But 2017, 18, up to 2024, hindi pa rin natatapos. Pinakapagong yung DOTR. Kaya pag sinabi na natin, hindi uusbong ang turismo sa ating bansa dahil sa airport, whether international or domestic, patay na tayo, wala tayong solusyon. Again, sasabihin ko, hindi kasalanan ng DOT. Kaya nga, kulang ang seats. Anong gagawin natin? Nakaasa sa DOTR, sa airports, ay walang pag-asa. Ang pagong talaga nila. And we're on Facebook Live where people will say, yes, they will agree. And they don't enforce it well. Terrible. So seats, infrastructure, tinanggal sa budget because there's limited fiscal space. So what do we do? Ayan, dumadami ang problema. Kaya dapat realistic tayo para hindi rin kayo sinisisi para alam natin, hahanap tayo ng solusyon. Right now, 3 na yan, no? Seats, that's beyond you. But it's really not beyond you because we can really encourage more carriers to come, right? And it's a matter really of talking. Bob Sobrado, yan, expert yan dyan. Alam niya, bago pa tayo mapanganak, yan na ang ginagawa nila. Diba? So, people like Dading Clemente of Raja Tours and Bob Sobrado, they would know. So seats, infrastructure, airports. Nako, dumadami ang problema. Yes.
Yes. If
Okay.
I may continue, Madam Chair. There is a silver lining. In a sense that our president has strongly propounded that public-private partnerships should be the way in terms of improving our airports. We have seen much success in this in terms of Cebu as well as Clark. And so we are pleased with the good news that the private proponent has already taken over the NAIA airports, and we hope to be able to see at least incremental changes in its operations by the end of the year. This taking over by the private sector will also, number one, increase the number of flights that can come into the Philippines per hour, as well as increase the number of seats. In terms of seats,
By how many seats will we increase?
will
Yeah, may I know,
Yes.
if we have 19 million seats, 19 million arrivals, is it 19 million? Can I go back to that page? 19 ba yun?
Yes. Can we flash the seats? please?
Yes.
The
So-
DOTR actually made a presentation to indicate what will be the increase in capacities, Madam Chair, once the takeover is in full swing. You have that.
When we say 19 million international seats, are we already maximizing the seats or there are possibilities for how many more seats unfilled?
Well, Madam Chair, the seats are not only occupied by tourists coming into the country, but also other types of travelers, as well as returning Filipinos and the like.
For your 5 million arrivals, you're not counting returning Filipinos, right? Are you including balikbayans or OFWs returning to the country? You should not include OFWs who are returning for vacation, seamen. Hindi kasama yan
Overseas
sa 5 million.
Filipinos that are already residents of other countries are counted, and they account for a little over 8%, if I'm not mistaken, of our international
Okay, para
arrivals.
clear yung figure. So the 5 million international arrivals includes balikbayans. When we say balikbayans, these are former Filipinos, maybe dual citizens living in other countries but returning for their relatives or temporarily for a vacation. But I hope the 5 million count does not include overseas Filipino workers who are returning home after naging seaman sila, naging domestic helper, or even a professional but returning home. No.
No, they are not
Okay.
included, Madam Chair.
So 5 million are, and 8% of the 5 million, it's 10%, mga 400,000 of that are Filipino balikbayans. Tama?
Thereabouts.
Okay, kung 5 million, 8%, mga 400,000. Correct?
Thereabouts,
Okay.
yes. Now, Madam Chair, according to the DOTR, with the major upgrades to the NAIA airports, there will be an increase in annual output to around 62 million passengers. and from an average of 62 million passengers, and from an average of 40 air traffic movement to around 48 flights per hour.
In short, we all know that travelers will not be all tourists. So how do we determine the available? Okay, we need to know with the new airport, ilang buwan yan, ilang taon, ilang dekada, pero hindi, mabilis yung nag-take over, magaling yan. So, how many seats will be available for tourists? Foreign tourists or Filipino balikbayan tourists? Yan. Gusto ko malaman. And how many years? 1 year, 2 years? Let's prepare for that. Right? So, with the takeover of NAIA, there's a prospective number of flights which will bring in how many seats, and of those seats, in your computation on a conservative scale, how many will be filled with tourists? Yeah.
Our Assistant Secretary specifically devoted to routes development is currently getting that particular number, Madam Chair.
Expect you to know, I mean, just to be clear, I don't expect the secretary, who's a very, very bright girl and always prepared, to know the answers to all my questions, because that's why I'm asking. I just need to probe to understand it better. But to plan for our tourism for the next 4 years, we need to know, with the new airport, at least in NAIA, how many seats, and when will this happen? Because NAIA, that's a long project. Will it happen during your incumbency? During this term, right?
Once we have the complete information, we will provide it to you, Madam Chair. On the efforts of the Department of Tourism to address challenges in terms of connectivity, we have developed a routes development team in the DOT that works with both the the CAB, and other aviation-related boards and groups to ensure that slots are being maximized coming into the country and that routes are being reinstated or created.
I'm confused. It says here, for January to June 2024, there are 8.9 million available international seats. This must be wrong because it says here 19.1 million seats. What does this mean?
The numbers that are flashed on the screen pertain to 2023, Madam Chair.
2023, and this is the pre-pandemic thing.
With a pre-pandemic recovery of 94%.
What does it mean that from January to kasi kalahating taon lang. So, kung i-double mo to, 9 plus 9, 18, ganun na naman. Correct. So, it's half a year. Yeah, this is half a year. Yeah, please proceed. So, we need to know with the new airport, una, kailan ba yung matatapos? Pangalawa, pagtapos, so, ilang taon matatapos? Pagkatapos niya, ilang seats ang mag-i-increase, and how are we preparing for that?
Madam Chair, I'm sure the DOTR would be able to provide a more comprehensive answer. But as they're getting the numbers, I just want to highlight that the Department of Tourism, notwithstanding the fact that it is not its chief mandate to increase connectivity, has worked and advocated with the DOTR in terms of our routes development team. The specific purpose of the routes development team is to liaise and negotiate in the air panels together with CAP and CAAB in order to reinstitute flights that were discontinued because of the pandemic, as well as to expand more routes into the country as well as domestically. So as you can see in the screen on the right, we now expect new routes to be instituted as far as increasing connectivity into the country. For Philippine Airlines, for example, we expect a Manila-Seattle flight. This is, of course, in addition to the United Airlines flight that is already ongoing from Manila to San Francisco. We now also expect Cebu-Osaka flight as well as an Iloilo to Singapore. Cebu Pacific has new flights that will provide connectivity from Hong Kong, Chiang Mai, and Bangkok, and so on and so forth. One of the most exciting things that we can anticipate are the institution of flights from India, which we perceive to be a robust outbound tourism market that can be tapped by the Philippines. With that, the Department of Tourism sent a delegation to India, specifically to meet with our counterparts and stakeholders there in order to push for these flights to be instituted. We have also, together with the DOTR, participated in air panels for purposes of negotiating and consulting as far as maximizing the number of slots that can be added from international destinations in order to increase the number of flights to the country. We also participate in joint promotion activities together with our partners in the aviation industry in order to encourage more arrivals into the country.
Please proceed.
Madam Chair, we also have updated numbers as of 2024 in terms of the number of available seats, and we can provide that to you. To move on, Madam Chair, one of the challenges that the Philippines also faces is in terms of the visa policies of the country. Notably, our ASEAN neighbors have vastly liberalized their visa policies coming into the country post the pandemic. For example, in terms of the institution of electronic visas, our neighbors, including Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and the like, as well as, have already instituted electronic visas, which is why in the Philippines, we have advocated for the implementation of an e-visa system, and we are pleased that the President has already approved the same, and we anticipate that this will be implemented, hopefully, before the end of the year by both the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Bureau of Immigration. On the other hand, we are also advocating not only for electronic visas, but other measures such as visas on arrival, as well as group visas. And one of the accomplishments that have been had through our collaboration with the Bureau of Immigration and the Department of Justice is the Cruise Visa Waiver Program, which allows for our cruise tourism passengers to conveniently avail of a cruise visa waiver if they seek to come into the country. And that we anticipate can add more to our cruise tourism passengers.
we'll have to suspend our briefing to after October 11. I have many more questions. I assure the good secretary that I will never reduce your budget. In fact, I don't even think it will remain the same. I'm sure to increase it, which I believe has not happened since 2022. But I have to understand. That's why I ask a lot of questions. And I need time, meaning we will start next time at 9 a.m. on a day that the secretary and I are completely free the whole day, with all of you there, because I have to know each and everything that you're doing. Although I studied it, but iba yung nandyan kaharap kayo. So pasensya na po, ako'y maraming tanong para maintindihan ko. It's only now I understood or I learned of the zero infrastructure, no 8B, that's your ask of DPWH, and you have a tier 2, 497 million. I have to study all of those so that also when we resume, it's clearer in my mind. In the meantime, enjoy the lunch, but the lunch in the Senate is never good. Okay, so let me just put this on record also, which you can answer in the next hearing. If you look at the per capita cost of investments, right, in tourism, this is expenditures. The Philippines is $11 to. $11.6. Our arrival is 5.4. That's a per capita cost, huh? It's 11.6. Thailand has an arrival of 28 million, and their per capita cost of expenditure for tourists is 5.2. It is one half of the Philippines. Can you kindly answer that? Again, when you come back, you have a week to answer that. Our per capita cost of investment for tourists is bigger, higher than Thailand. But why do they have more tourists? If this is accurate, 11.6 per capita cost in the Philippines, 5.2 per capita cost for Thailand. Vietnam per capita cost is only 6.9. Is this accurate? Huh? 6.9 lang ang Vietnam, tama?
Ito yung kanilang figure nila yan, ma'am.
Yeah. The per capita cost is only 6.9, but they have 12 million tourists. So, balik ako sa tanong ko, bakit ganun? Ang per capita cost ng Cambodia, 5.6 lang, kalahati ng ating 11.6. Pero meron silang 4.9, konti lang diferensya sa Pilipinas. So, I will leave, I don't expect you to know, to understand that, compare us with Thailand, one half per capita cost. Compare with Cambodia, one half per capita cost, but only a slight difference in arrivals. And Vietnam, one half per capita cost, but more than double of the arrivals. Taking into consideration all the challenges that the good secretary had mentioned. Having said that, I thank you for your patience. I thank you for being intent and listening to our discussions. I hope to see you after October 11, and yeah, then with all agencies already. We will finish it for our next hearing. Thank you very much. We suspend to allow for a more comprehensive discussion. We suspend the briefing. It's not yet a hearing, right? And then a formal notice, of course, will be given. Thank you. Thank you very much.